Study Session 7. Entry in Social Casework. Introduction. Social casework is an important aspect of social work practice and must be critically treated for understanding. Therefore, initial steps in casework process is a key to a successful treatment of social problems. There are two ways of approaching a social casework practice. 1. Using ready approach, and 2. Using gather approach. These are acronyms and shall be discussed in detail. In the first part of entry in social casework, ready was discussed, and in this second part another approach called gather will be discussed. Importance of good entry in social casework cannot be overemphasized. Approach in entry can make or mar any case the social worker is to handle. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to 1. Identify the ready approach of entry in social casework, and 2. Explain the importance of this approach to social work practice. 3. List what gather stands for in social casework, and 4. Explain the importance of gather to social work practice. 5. What are ready and gather approaches? 6. Why do we apply these approaches in social casework? 7. What is gather in social casework? 8. Why is gather important to social casework? Definition. Ready is an acronym for rapport building, exploration, decision making, and implementation. Gather is yet another acronym for greet, ask, tell, help, explain, and return visit. These two approaches in entry are alike and have just simplified the subject matter in the way of easy understanding. However, the peculiarity of each of these methods of approach must be understood by all social workers. Ready approach. R equals rapport building. The first step in social casework is to welcome the client warmly to the agency and to your office. This will build a positive confidence into the client. You introduce yourself and the agency to your client. Explain those services that are available at the agency or being rendered by the agency. Assure the client of absolute confidentiality in your dealings together. E. Exploration. Find out the client's needs or problems, risks, social context, and circumstances. Assess the client's knowledge and give information as needed. This is the investigation stage. The social worker must explore all issues related to client's problems to be able to arrive at the proper diagnosis of the case. Exploration, which is investigation, is the key in social casework to arriving at a diagnosis of the problem. This stage requires a skilled social worker. In every step taken as a professional social worker, the client must be assisted in his or her self-determination. The client has right to self-determination. In investigating or exploring the case, the knowledge base of the social worker must come to play. The knowledge of social work theories that are related to the case will help to arrive at a proper diagnosis of the problems, thus making the kind of help or treatment to be rendered feasible. D equals decision making. This stage requires a collaborative effort of the client and the social worker. The social worker, having arrived at a diagnosis, must identify the client's decision about the diagnosis. The first question is to ask the client his or her opinion about the diagnosis of his or her problem. Is the client's decision in conformity with the diagnosis? The social worker must also identify the client's options for each decision. These are options that the client and social worker must jointly examine without any prejudice. They will weigh the benefits, disadvantages, and consequences of each decision. The social worker will, at this stage, exhibit his or her professional ability by assisting the client to make a realistic decision. The word assist is deliberately used as no social worker can impose his or her own decision on any client. It is this realistic decision both the client and social worker will work on. I equals implementing the decision. A professional social worker shall make a concrete, specific professional plan for carrying out the decision arrived at with the client. The social worker shall identify skills that will help the client in carrying out his or her decision. The social worker must think about resources needed for the treatment of the diagnosis of the social problems and make such resources available to the client. Sometimes the resources may be outside the agency function. Adequate action by social worker is therefore required to link the client up with these resources. The social worker must make a plan for a follow-up or referral where necessary. There are cases that may be multidimensional, such as marital dispute and illness. A multi-approach is expected in this case. That is, the social worker looking into and finding solution to the marital dispute while the medical aspect is being treated by a medical team. Therefore, a professional social worker recognizes the importance of professional collaboration with other professions. GADA, an acronym, means greet, ask, tell, help, explain, and return visit or refer. This acronym GADA will be systematically discussed. G equals greet. The social worker is expected to welcome the client by greeting warmly. This is an important stage in social casework. It is a beginning of relationship building without which no meaningful achievement can be made. First impression matters most in every relationship. Therefore, the social worker must cultivate a culture of warm approach in all his or her dealings with the clients. Warm greetings can draw the clients out to present his or her social problems. A equals ask. The social worker is expected to ask the client about his or her welfare, the family, especially the spouse and children. This should be conducted familiarly as further step to relationship building. Ask about the work or employment of the client. Do the best to identify with the client and his or her social problem, empathy. T equals tell. The social worker should explain the services available at the agency to the client, ascertain that the client is in the right agency. If not, refer the client to the appropriate agency. The social worker must also tell of the agency's limitations to avoid disappointing the client from his or her high expectations of the agency. H equals help. No help can be rendered without the support of the client. In other words, the principle of self-determination must come to play. The client has a major role to play in finding solution to his or her social problems. The social worker must have a direct discussion with the client on every service available to the client from the agency. Also, tell clients about resources available outside your own agency. For example, a family welfare officer may have to refer a client with medical problem to medical experts like doctors, nurses. A medical social worker may facilitate this process. E equals explain. The social worker must explain the methods of treatment and the treatment to the client fully. The social worker does not practice in secret. It is an open practice with due regard to confidentiality. This issue of confidentiality is a contract between the social worker and the client, and only two of them must be open to themselves for effective treatment. Other issues relevant to the client's treatment must be properly explained to the client. Explanation is a key to understanding. R equals return or refer. The social worker must know that several visits may have to be made before a social problem is completely treated. A case that has not been resolved would require several meetings and visits. It could necessitate a home visit. The social worker must keep all appointments with client. This is credibility test on the part of the worker. And for every visit, you itemize your achievements for better evaluation. Visitation is a process in social casework. However, the social worker must make referral to appropriate agencies where and when necessary. Intra and inter-agency referral is encouraged in social work practice. Comparing READY and GADA. It must be noted that both READY and GADA have so many things in common. It is even preferred that they point to the same direction. R equals rapport building. G equals grit. E equals exploration. A equals ask or assess. T equals tell. D, decision making. H equals help. E equals explain. I equals implementing the decision. R equals return visit, referral. Relationship between READY and GADA, entry in social work. There are many overlaps between the steps of READY and GADA. Rapport building corresponds to grit with elements of ask or assess. Exploration incorporates ask or assess and tell. Decision making includes the help step and also elements of ask, assess, and tell. Implementing the decision includes help, explain, and return visit. These overlaps are continuous. Study session summary. Entry in social casework using READY approach is a tool used by professional social worker to reach a client and begin a worker-client relationship. READY is a diagnostic tool in social casework. 4 issues are involved in READY, namely rapport building, exploration, decision making, and implementing the decision. A professional social worker is expected to warmly welcome the client, make adequate introduction of self and agency with services being rendered, and assure the client of absolute confidentiality. The social worker must explore or investigate the client's needs, risks, and circumstances, assess the client's knowledge, and give information to assist the client in his or her self-determination. The social worker should identify the client's decisions and options to each decision, weigh the benefits, disadvantages, and consequences of each to assist the client to make a realistic decisions. Finally, the social worker must make a concrete, specific professional plan for carrying out the decision jointly made by the worker and the client. The acronym called the GADA is an approach for entry in social casework. The first step in social casework is the entry, which is a stage in relationship building without which no worker-client relationship can be established. GADA simply means greet, ask, tell, help, explain, and return visit or refer. The social worker must welcome and greet the client warmly. First impression gives direction to what may be expected as a result. Ask of the client's welfare, including the spouse and children's. Tell the client about services available at your agency and elsewhere. Tell the client if he or she has come to the right agency. In whatever form of help the social worker is going to render, the client must be carried along in the spirit of self-determination. No meaningful help can be rendered without the support of the client. The social worker must explain every aspect of treatment and methods to be rendered to the client. Other relevant issues related to the client's treatment must be properly explained only to the client in keeping with the principle of confidentiality. Return visits. A social worker must make it a rule to make visits to the client as may be required, and where necessary, clients are referred to appropriate agencies by professional social worker. Finally, a full understanding of GADA as an entry in social casework is required of every professional social worker. End of study session summary. Thank you for listening.